So we are group one, and we're going to be talking about the changes in family relationships and responsibilities in middle adulthood. I'm Vanessa Malig.
I'm Chanel Gonzalez.
I'm Jada Grove.
And I'm Stella Liang.
Okay, so the three preliminary research questions that we're focusing on are: what challenges could someone in middle adulthood undergo? What are some responsibilities someone in middle adulthood could have? And what past trauma has influenced people in their middle adulthood stage of life? So some background of middle adulthood is that this period of life begins around 40 to 45 years of age and extends to about 60 to 65 years of age. During this time, there is a decline in physical skills and expanding one's responsibilities. Thoughts about getting older and getting closer to the end of their life is some of the responsibilities. People in middle adulthood are thinking about the next generation and how they still have time to contribute to their future and feel satisfied with their life. This age development is multifaceted, and it makes it different from other stages of development because there's definitely more responsibilities of middle adulthood. From our textbook, there's a quote that says, balancing work and relationship responsibilities in the midst of physical and physiological changes associated with aging is how they described middle adulthood. Next is that this period of life is just thinking about the gains and losses and how to equal out the differences of people in a middle adulthood.
My slide is challenges in middle adulthood, relationships with children, family dynamic, entering middle adulthood. During this time, relationship with self is my first slide. During this time, people may experience a time where their physical skills may start to decline. They may start to think more about the time that they have left. An accident or illness can cause them to reflect their priorities. Hair graying and teeth yellowing may cause them to want to appear younger. Or on a more positive side, their education, career, and relationships may begin to peak. Next topic, body image in middle adulthood. People later in life report feeling dissatisfied with their bodies and having misconceptions with their bodies. On a survey, 1 in 5 adults age 55 plus felt anxious. 20% or 23% felt depressed specifically because of their body image. Because of how we view body image in our society, it's reasonable to understand that because body image is where we root a lot of our values and how we feel about ourselves as a person. Family dynamic empty nest. People who are in their middle adulthood stage of life are seeing their kids off to college, getting a license, and starting to have serious relationships of their own. Parents may struggle with the idea of their children, especially the youngest, moving out of the home, and they may experience empty nest syndrome. A decrease in marital satisfaction that occurs after children leave the home because parents derive considerable satisfaction from their children. Parents should treat young adults / their children more like adults and not kids, let go of much of their parenting role. Some parents that don't let go of that parenting role can lead to or helicopter parenting. Engaging in these unhealthy behaviors can result in unhealthy relationships or strains on the relationship with their children. A recommendation that I have is discussing this with your children and discussing how you're feeling and creating those healthy boundaries. Becoming a grandparent in middle adulthood. Many people become grandparents for the first time during middle adulthood. Adults in midlife play important roles to their grandchildren. They can also share experiences with others, like having kids who are going into adulthood. They could also be caring for aging parents. Something that I recommend for middle adulthood people who are caring for aging parents is if you are experiencing something which is called caregiver burnout that can happen to you if you are caring for your aging parents, understand that it's normal to feel some resentment and ask for help. When people fail to ask for help is when things happen like neglect or endangerment of the person in need of care.
So now moving on to the responsibilities. Most of those in middle adulthood will often face responsibilities that are family related. So individuals in middle adulthood will most likely have a job, and on top of their jobs, they'll need to focus on maintaining relationships with not only their partner, but also other family members too. So those in middle adulthood will often face many work-related stresses too, and that can affect their physical and mental health. And with their mental and physical health being affected, this can often affect them later in the future too, like during their late adulthood. But since both the mental and physical health is being affected, this can heavily impact an individual's relationship with not only their partner, but other family members too. And this is because these stresses can impact the way an individual will react or handle certain situations. So this is why there's often a lot of people who have a hard time getting along with each other in relationships, and it can lead to things such as massive arguments. And if problems like these aren't really resolved, it can potentially weaken or even ruin relationships. And next, another responsibility is for those in middle adulthood to care for their aging parents along with their own children too. So this is why they're considered the sandwich generation. And for a lot of cultures, it's actually considered a tradition to care for the elderly. And this is because it's a tradition of family responsibility. But there's also a lot of individuals who already struggle to care for their children alone. And when it comes to caring for their dependent parents, it can cause them more stress. And with being a caregiver, they often experience many kinds of stresses, such as emotional, physical, and financial stress, which is why the well being of many caregivers are often being affected negatively. And especially if an individual is the head of a household, it can contribute even more to the stresses of being a caregiver, since they often have to balance so many things, such as maintaining a job to be financially stable in order to pay bills and just to provide for a family overall. And along with being the head of a household, individuals will have to make sure to be involved in the lives of their own children too. So this will mean they will have to create time out of their own schedule to attend school events, sports events, or even help their own children with homework. And on top of that, being a caregiver, it can contribute more to their schedule because they'll have to make more time to interact with their elderly parents and to take them to doctors for checkups. And they also need to focus on cooking for them, cleaning for them, going grocery shopping. But overall, they need to focus on completing tasks that the elderly themselves can't complete due to their old age.
Okay, I'll be talking about love, marriage, and divorce in middle adulthood. Overall, there's an increase in marriage satisfaction in this age range. Partners see each other a little more positively than maybe in the past, a little less stressed. And there's also divorce in this time period as well. There's a little less stigma, and people who didn't feel comfortable getting divorced in previous stages of life feel a little more comfortable with it because of maybe their children are leaving and stuff like that, and they just feel the less need to be together. And I think it's also important to talk about the traumas that may affect the relationships that happen in middle adulthood. Something that I found in my research was childhood sexual assault and childhood physical abuse and how they can affect relationships. This is a table that shows basically that those who have experienced child sexual assault or child physical abuse experience a little more hardships in their relationships compared to those who didn't experience any of those things. some considerations and recommendations for better outcomes. I think it's important to have strong support systems with your children and siblings, and that could lead to greater stress management and greater satisfaction overall in middle adulthood. Also, emotional bonding creates stronger ties, like in a study done by Sao in 2017. So with that being said, in conclusion, generally individuals seem to have a greater sense of stability in this time period. And individuals are generally sorting out their interpersonal relationships. And of course, again, with that sandwich generation of not being old enough and not quite young enough. These are some sources that I felt and we all felt were a little better, and some that could be a little more helpful. The textbook was definitely a good source for a basis of our research, and I liked the solutions that Sal presented. In this other source, Fernandez gave insight into women's roles and how that affects them in middle age. And lastly, Ray in 2021 was a good source for how trauma affects relationships, but a lot of the data was subjective and self-reported.
So some implications we think the info presented that was on middle adulthood is that preparing individuals for what to expect during middle adulthood. It also introduced some aspects that are not talked about or widely known about the age range of middle adulthood, and it may help those who are in the age range of middle adulthood and how they don't need to feel alone or like isolated in their experiences. Some questions that we did not address were how sibling relationships are changed. So like people that are in middle adulthood and their sibling relationships and how that affected them if they had siblings or not, and then how grief experienced in middle adulthood. So just like everybody's experience is different from like one family to another, so everything is kind of just textbook based, not very like all inclusive. And then just people who are not mentally prepared or ready to undergo like the responsibilities of middle adulthood, and some people who are early developing and late developing.
And these are the references we have for everything. And yeah, show everybody. And thank you for listening to us today, and have a good rest of the summer.